What is the cost, would you estimate, for uploading for a print book between the actual, whatever the process entails and the cover, et cetera? What is the bottom line and cost? Would you say?
I would say it's not expensive for someone who wasn't working, you know, and I was able to put out 2 books 3 months apart. So I mean, that should tell you, a guy who was living on unemployment at the time. Not expensive at all. Depending on where you go, CreateSpace, you know, only charges you for proofs, and you know, that's one of the ways where they kind of make their money is if you keep. You correct it, you send it in, they send you a proof you have to pay for, and then you find more errors. And if you do that 3 or 4 times, you know, but you have no one to blame but yourself because it should have been right the first or second time.
Although that's difficult.
It's difficult. It is difficult, you know, as we already talked about, you know, having an editor, someone who can flag everything right away.
Right.
And since I designed the covers myself, again, you know, that didn't really cost anything. It just cost the fact that, you know, I knew how to work Photoshop.
And what about the spine, that too, or?
Oh yes, well they do that.
And the back cover?
Yes, they do all that. You know, you just write what you want, and it's sort of, these covers are templates. You know, and you just give them the photo.
And would you encourage writers, especially as new writers, to go that route as opposed to sending out the query letter and going through the traditional agent?
I would say maybe both, if possible, because I think definitely, I think a new writer would. It feels good. It's definitely the way. It feels good to have product that you can show people, and that you can sell, and that you can promote. I think there is a chance that, say, a new writer, especially someone young, like say someone just out of high school, would probably use this before they're really ready to publish, and I think that would be you know, a bit of an embarrassment later on. I'm kind of glad that I waited so long, you know, until I was about, I think I was about 39 the first time I published, because by that time I'd been writing for so many years that I basically worked out all my problems with writing by the time I finally decided to publish. And I think a young writer say, "Oh, good! I just wrote, you know, 7 short stories, and I can now publish it." You know.
Well, yes, that is a problem because there isn't any quality control really on what goes out through self-publishing. Although there are a lot of books that are published through traditional publishers that are really awful too. But there's that filter, at least, that you think, well, someone's vetted this.
Someone has.
Yeah, exactly. To talk a little bit about the horror genre, because this is something that we haven't discussed on Authors Without Borders Presents with an author. We've had one of our group writes fantasy, but horror has a very special genre and has a very targeted audience. How do you determine who that audience is, and how do you reach them?
Well, you know, the funny thing about that audience is when I talk about my books, I do get a lot of people who are like, "Oh, that's not really for me." You know, they sort of back away. But that doesn't mean I'm writing for a small group of people. It's a niche audience, but it's a huge niche. People love being scared, you know. Some people tell me they can watch a horror movie but not read a scary book. And some people it's the other way around, you know. But people do love being scared, and I love it myself, you know. The horror genre is something that I've grown up with. Stephen King, of course.
I was just going to ask you, do you feel kinship mostly towards him, or
yes,
is he the closest?
We read all of his stuff in my family, you know, when I was growing up, and his books were all over the place, amongst other books. You know, my parents were great readers and still are.
I'm just going to take a moment for people who've tuned in a little bit late and just seeing us here.
Shame on you.
Shame on you. This is Authors Without Borders Presents. I'm Joyce Walsh, and my guest is Craig O'Connor, who has published 4 books and has a lot of other credentials to his name. But we're talking right now about horror. What do you enjoy reading yourself? What do you enjoy watching? And how do you separate yourself from some of the gory things that you imagine and put on page?
It is a little bit difficult to. Well, who told you I separate myself?
Well, you didn't come in costume.
Hello. I could come in talking as Boris Karloff.
That's right, or Jack the Ripper.
Yes, but the separating yourself. The funny thing about writing scary stuff is, you know, you have to get into that zone. And the funny thing about the 2 novels that I have, Whitechapel Fight and The Monster of Modern Times, Monster is the sequel to the Whitechapel Five.
Which it would give a little discussion about what the Whitechapel
The
Five
Whitechapel
is.
Five is about a real, what do you call those? The real life crime writers, and that's a big genre these days. And here's the book, The Whitechapel Five, and it's mostly about how he's writing a book about Jack the Ripper, and he's not the Ripper, but the writer, Mickey Turner is his name. He's very well known for describing the gory scenes, and his nickname is Icky Mickey Turner. And he's a bit full of himself, and he loves what he does, and he finds out that there's been a murder on a college campus, and that it involves a secret society called the Whitechapel Five. And because he knows all about Jack the Ripper, he knows that that's a reference to the Ripper, and he thinks this would be a marvelous opportunity to sort of tie in with what I'm doing. And he also secretly hopes to maybe figure out, be there when the killer is caught, maybe even to solve the crime himself.
And a lot of this takes place on what is a sort of local campus substitute, right?
It's not Stonehill.
No.
Before you students out there get any ideas, I created a campus on the Avon-Brockton line, which there is no campus there, so with a large wooded area.
So it has a very New England flavor to it.
Yes, without a doubt. And it's basically, I forgot what the question was originally.
Well, just to give the viewers a little idea of, tease them a little.
Well, basically, first, he, like I said, he's very full of himself, and he decides that, it would be wonderful if he could catch the criminal. As he spends more time there, he comes to know some of the students, and he comes to suddenly realize, instead of just writing about a crime, which is what all real-life crime writers do, they write about something that's already happened and that they really have no connection with. He suddenly thrust himself into the middle of it, and he suddenly realizes it's no fun to be talking with people who may be the next victim. And he does go through that, and it changes him during the course of the book. He realizes that if he's going to catch this criminal, it's not because he wants his name in the paper, or Icky Mickey has risen to a new level. It's because he generally wants to see someone caught and see some lives saved.
Now, you've decided to write a sequel. I have read the original, but I haven't read the sequel. Tell us, how do you write a sequel to, is it just using him as the character with a totally different set of circumstances?
Using him as the character, but it is a different crime. It's 3 years down the road. His experiences from the Whitechapel Five have changed him to a degree, and he's retired from writing. And in this one, in the Whitechapel 3, his marriage was breaking up, and by this time it's healed again. They're back together, but there's a criminal out there who wants to be the star of an Icky Mickey page turner, and he thinks, if he commits some nasty enough crimes, this will get our friend's attention, and he'll write about him again. Of course, Mickey doesn't want anything to do with it.
So. Well, do you think this is going to be an ongoing character for you? Will you do other books?
I think I'd like to
Mickey
write
Turner?
at least one more Mickey Turner. Mysteries are tough to write. I don't know if I haven't read your fiction yet, but they are incredibly difficult to write. And I'm a appreciator of the old kind of mystery, where there are certain clues that people find, and you don't really know what they're for until it's all fit into the puzzle. Unlike the mystery we get today, which is, we found a hair, let's take it to the lab. Ah, it is Frank. That doesn't really do anything for me. I like sort of the old-fashioned kinds. And I'd like to do one more with Mickey at the very least. And especially since in these days, one of the popular trends is not, hey, I've got a terrific book, I've got a terrific series of books.
Right.
Right. Thank you, J.K. Rowling. But yes, if you can sell not just one book, but if you can, it's like selling someone a series of cars over the course of 10 years. If you can sell someone a series of books over the course of 10 years, you look wonderful to any publisher.
And you get a loyal reader.
Yes.
Which is what we'll get today. Hope people will go to your website, and we'll put that up on the screen, and have another look at your books and short stories, and tell us how far along are you in your next book?
Well, I have started writing another book. It's more of it is going to involve a ghost, but it's not going to be a incredibly scary one. I wanted to do something more along the lines of a dramatic romance involving a ghost.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a few chapters in.
Good for you.
Yeah. Plus writing short stories too. Whenever whenever the muse doesn't knock on that door, you know, you answer the other door.
And the short stories, at least the ones that I've read, are a little bit gorier than the novel. And with that, we'll close. And thank you very much, Craig, for being my guest already.
No. CraigO'Connor.info. Be there or be square.
That's right. Thank you all. Good night.
Good night.